Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to Wisteria College, where there's an ongoing education of Srimad-Bhagavatam going on daily, at least once a day. Sitting here with the cream of the crop of the devotees who've been coming to this Wisteria College, just outside of Folkestone, in between Folkestone and Canterbury, at Hode Farm, in the middle of everywhere. Welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. Sitting here with Priya Kun Prabhu, the illustrious leader of the Folkestone Yatra, along with his glorious wife, and better half, by the way, Shamagori, who just happens to be the best cook in the world. And if you doubt that, just ask any of the brahmacharis or sannyasis in the room, and they'll tell you exactly what the truth is. We have Radharaman, the local saint and renunciate, wandering mendicant, who just runs around enlightening everyone as to what the truth is. He's a little like Narada Muni, He comes and, says the right thing to the right person in the right place to keep the whole thing, going. We have Dolamora Prabhu, the leader of the Brahmachari ashram, renunciate, also wandering mendicant, and inspirer of men, especially brahmacharis. We have Bhakta Sam, that learned person, great soul, personality, who's making devotees left, right, and center. And we have Bhakta Matt, who's like the techie on board, who's putting the verses on the board for the first time ever, and taking care of me like nobody except for Priya Kun has ever taken care of me. And here we are, Hare Krishna. We're so fortunate to be together, to be able to hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam every day like this in the company of pure devotees. And my good fortune knows no bounds. I will try my best to do some payback, which I can never pay back, but I'm going to try tonight by reading to them the Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram by Sanatana Goswami, and then as much as we can read in the time allotted of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. So, Sanatana Goswami has this to say about the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar of the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Dotitaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madgudo Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Saduta Dayin Atini Chochata Kada Hanamun Chagadachin Mam Premna Rit Kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we reached the 33rd verse of the 6th chapter, Creation of the Universal Form, the 3rd chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Maitreya Muni is continuing to explain or answer the questions of Vidura. Text 33. Are the Shudras who satisfy the Lord by service. Purport. Service is the real constitutional occupation of all living entities. The living entities are meant to render service to the Lord, and they can attain religious perfection by this service attitude. One cannot attain religious perfection simply by speculating to attain theoretical knowledge. The Jnani division of spiritualists go on speculating only to distinguish the soul from matter, but they have no information of the activities of the soul after being liberated by knowledge. It is said that persons who only engage in mental speculation to know things as they are, and who do not engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, are simply wasting their time. It is clearly said here that the principle of service was generated from the legs of the Lord for the sake of perfecting the religious process. But this transcendental service is different from the idea of service in the material world. In the material world, no one wants to be a servant. Everyone wants to become the master, because false mastership is the basic disease of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul in the material world wants to lord it over others. Illusioned by the external energy of the Lord, he is forced to become a servant of the material world. That is the real position of the conditioned soul. The last snare of the illusory external energy is the conception of becoming one with the Lord. And due to this conception, the illusioned soul remains in the bondage of material energy, falsely thinking himself a liberated soul, and as good as Narayana. It is actually better to be a Shudra than to be a Brahmana and not develop the service attitude. Because that attitude alone satisfies the Lord. Every living being, even if you be a Brahmana by qualification, must take to the transcendental service of the Lord. Both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad-Bhagavatam confirm that this service attitude is the perfection of a living entity. A Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra can perfect his occupational duties only by rendering service unto the Lord. A Brahmana is supposed to know this fact due to his perfection in Vedic wisdom. The other sections are supposed to follow the direction of a Brahmana Vaishnava, one who was a Brahmana by qualification, and a Vaishnava by action. That will make the entire society perfect in regard to the order of its social construction. A disordered society cannot satisfy either the members of the society or the Lord. Even if one is not a perfect Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, but takes to the service of the Lord, not caring for the perfection of his social position, he becomes a perfect human being, simply by developing the attitude of service to the Supreme Lord. Text 34. All these different social divisions, along all living entities in all parts of the entire universe are supposed to be eternal servitors of the Supreme Body. All parts of our own body, such as the mouth, hands, thighs, and legs, are meant to render service to the whole. That is their constitutional position. In subhuman life, the living entities are not conscious of this constitutional position. But in the human form of life, they are supposed to know this through the system of the Varnas, the social orders. As above mentioned, the Brahmana is the spiritual master of all the orders of society, and thus Brahminical culture, culminating in the transcendental service of the Lord, is the basic principle for purifying the soul. In conditioned life, the soul is under the impression that he can become the Lord of the universe. And the last point of this misconception is to think oneself the supreme. The foolish conditioned soul does not take into account that the supreme cannot be conditioned by Maya or illusion. If the supreme were to become conditioned by illusion, where would be his supremacy? In that case, Maya or illusion would be the supreme. Therefore, because the living entities are conditioned, they cannot be supreme. The actual position of the conditioned soul is explained in this verse. All the conditioned souls are impure due to contact with the material energy in three modes of nature. Therefore, it is necessary that they purify themselves under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, who, as we have discussed above, must be not only a Brahmana by qualification, but also a Vaishnava. The only self-purifying process mentioned herein is to worship the Lord by the recognized method under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. That is the natural way of purification, and no other method is recommended as bona fide. The other methods of purification may be helpful to come to this stage of life, but ultimately one has to come to this last point before he attains actual perfection. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this truth as follows: Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabhaha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Text 35. O Vidura, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work, and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Purport. The froggish philosophers may go on with their mental speculations on the subject matter of the Virat, the gigantic form exhibited by the Yogamaya internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But factually, no one can measure such a vast exhibition. In the Bhagavad Gita 11:16, Arjuna, a recognized devotee of the Lord, says, Aneka bahu dadavaktra netram pashyami tvam sarvato nantarupam nantam namadhyam napunastavadim Pashyami Vishveshvara Vishvarupa. O my Lord, O gigantic Vishvarupa form, O Master of the universe, I see innumerable arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes in all directions, and they are all unlimited. I cannot find the end of this manifestation, nor do I see the middle, nor the beginning. The Bhagavad Gita was specifically spoken to Arjuna, and the Vishvarupa was exhibited before him at his request. He was awarded the specific eyes to see this Vishvarupa, and yet although he was able to see the Lord's innumerable arms and mouths, he was unable to see him completely. Since Arjuna was unable to estimate the length and breadth of the potency of the Lord, who else would be able to do so? One may only indulge in miscalculation like the frog philosopher. The frog philosopher wanted to estimate the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean according to his experience of his 3-foot wide well, and thus he began to puff himself up to become as big as the Pacific Ocean. But at last he burst and died in this process. This story is applicable to the mental philosophers who, under the illusion of the Lord's external energy, indulge in estimating the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. The best path is to become a cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord. Try to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service as suggested in the previous verse. It solves all the confusion and issues and controversies. One sentence. The best path is to become a cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord. Try to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, as suggested in the previous verse. Kind of hangs together. Okay? 36. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Purport. The purification of the conditioned soul necessitates purification of his consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the presence of the transcendental soul is verified. And as soon as consciousness leaves the body, the material body is not active. Consciousness is perceived, therefore, by activities. The theory put forward by empiric philosophers that consciousness can remain in an inactive state is the proof of their poor fund of knowledge. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged. Because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent, even for a moment. When the body does not act, the consciousness acts in the form of dreams. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period, but when the intoxication of the drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. Maitreya's statement is that in order to avoid unchaste conscious activities, he was trying to describe the unlimited glories of the Lord despite not having the ability to describe them perfectly. This glorification of the Lord is not a product of research, but is the result of hearing submissively from the authority of the spiritual master. It is also not possible to repeat all that one has heard from his spiritual master, but one can narrate as far as possible by one's honest endeavor. It does not matter whether the Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's bodily, mental, and verbal activities in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. The existence of the conditioned soul can be purified only by the method of engaging one's mind and speech in the service of the Lord. The Tridandi Sannyasi of the Vaishnava school accepts 3 rods, representing the vow to engage in the service of the Lord with body, mind, and speech. Whereas the Ekadandi Sannyasi takes the vow to become one with the Supreme. Since the Lord is the Absolute, there is no distinction between Him and His glories. The glories of the Lord as chanted by the Vaishnava Sannyasi are as substantial as the Lord Himself, and thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with Him in transcendental interest, although he remains eternally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneous one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. Text 37. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Shall we read that again? What do you think? The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. I guess that rules out arguing about it. I'll read that again. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. Holy moly! Hare Krishna! Jai Dvaita Maharaj, if you're listening at this moment, thank you very much. You made Srila Prabhupada's words as crystal clear and powerful as they can. And Dravida, by the way, your able assistant. Purport. The impersonalists are very much afraid of hearing the activities of the Lord, because they think that the happiness derived from being transcendently situated in Brahman is the ultimate goal of life. They think that anyone's activity, even that of the personality of Godhead, is mundane. But the idea of happiness indicated in this verse is different, because it relates to the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has transcendental qualities. The word gunavadam is significant because the qualities of the Lord and His activities and pastimes are the subject matter for the discussions of devotees. A rishi like Maitreya is certainly not interested in discussing anything pertaining to mundane qualities, yet he says that the highest perfectional stage of transcendental realization is to discuss the Lord's activities. Srila Jiva Goswami therefore concludes that topics regarding the transcendental activities of the Lord are far beyond the transcendental realization of Kaivalya happiness. These transcendental activities of the Lord are so arranged in writing by the great sages that simply by hearing those narrations, one becomes perfectly self-realized, and the proper use of the ear and the tongue is also achieved. And reading its contents. Text 38. O my son, the original poet Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. Purport. There are some froggish philosophers who want to know the Supreme Soul by means of philosophy and mental speculation, and when the devotees, who are to some extent in knowledge of the Supreme Lord, admit that the glories of the Lord are inestimable or inconceivable, the froggish philosophers criticize them. These philosophers, like the frog in the well who tried to estimate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean, like to take trouble over fruitless mental speculation instead of taking instructions from devotees like the original poet, namely Brahma. Lord Brahma underwent a severe type of meditation for 1,000 celestial years, yet he said that the glories of the Lord are inconceivable. Therefore, what can the froggish philosophers hope to gain from their mental speculations? It is said in the Brahma Samhita that although the mental speculator may fly through the sky of speculation with the velocity of the mind or the wind for thousands of millions of years, he will still find the glories of the Lord inconceivable. The devotees, however, do not waste time in such vain searching after knowledge of the Supreme, but they submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. Thus, they transcendentally enjoy the process of hearing and chanting. The Lord approves of the devotional activities of the devotees, or Mahatmas, and He says, Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadam avyayam satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantascha dridavrtaha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. The pure devotees of the Lord take shelter of the para prakriti, the internal potency of the Lord, called Lakshmi Devi, Sita Devi, Shrimati Radharani, or Shrimati Rukmini Devi. And thus they become actual Mahatmas, or great souls. Mahatmas are not fond of indulging in mental speculations, but they actually take to the devotional service of the Lord without the slightest deviation. Devotional service is manifested in the primary process of hearing and chanting about the activities of the Lord. How many times we've heard that in just 2-3 purports? This transcendental method, practiced by the Mahatmas, gives them sufficient knowledge of the Lord, because if the Lord can at all be known to some extent, it is only through the means of devotional service, and no other way. One may go on speculating and waste the valuable time of his human life, but that will not help anyone to enter into the precincts of the Lord. The Mahatmas, however, are not concerned with knowing the Lord by mental speculation, because they enjoy hearing about his glorious activities in his transcendental dealings with his devotees or with the demons. The devotees take pleasure in both and are happy in this life and the life after. 39. Thus, the wonderful potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is bewildering even to the jugglers. That potent power is unknown even to the self-sufficient Lord, so it is certainly unknown to others. Purport. The froggish philosophers and mundane wranglers in science and mathematical calculation may not believe in the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they are sometimes puzzled by the wonderful jugglery of man and nature. Such jugglers and magicians of the mundane world are actually puzzled by the jugglery of the Lord in his transcendental activities. But they try to adjust their bewilderment by saying that it is all mythology. There is, however, nothing impossible or mythological in the Supreme Omnipotent Person. The most wonderful puzzle for the mundane wranglers is that while they remain calculating the length and breadth of the unlimited potency of the Supreme Person, his faithful devotees are set free from the bondage of material engagement simply by appreciating the wonderful joy. The devotees in meditation about the activities of the Lord, while the mundane wranglers waste time in dry speculation and mental concoction, which are fruitless in both this life and the next. In spite of their pride in speculation, they can never appreciate the simple, potent activities of the banyan tree. Such speculators are poor souls destined to remain in matter perpetually. Text 40. To non-devotees and mental speculators. Unless one relishes transcendental joy, naturally one will come back from his speculations and concocted conclusions because he will see them as neither factual nor enjoyable. The devotees can at least know that the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. As the Vedic hymns confirm, Om Tad Vishnu Padamam Padam Sada Pashanti Suryaha.